Hey, everybody. Welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so blessed and honored to be here with two amazing authors. And this is great. This is wonderful. We used to do a book club every month back when we first started. And I feel like we should get back to it because this book right here has been amazing. We have Ariana Danquah from Royal Dutch Shell and Koleshcia Fitzgerald from Microsoft Corporation, authors of this book, The Corporate Misadventures of Corissa Collins. Beautiful cover art, amazing book, insightful, relatable, funny at times, sad at others. I really loved it. Ladies, phenomenal book. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks so much.
Very gracious.
Well, yeah. And, actually, a friend of the show who some of you know out there, Julie Coleman, recommended that Koleshcia and I connect. And I'm so happy that she recommended that we connect. How do you know Julie, Koleshcia?
So I know Julie, and Julie is amazing, which I think most of you probably already know. I know Julie from my previous life when I was a policy advisor at Shell. So in that role, I was overseeing our domestic relocation policy and program. Julie was essentially my mentor. She took me under her wing and showed me the ropes because, quite frankly, I hadn't had any exposure to relo prior to going into that role. And so Julie was amazing, showing me the ropes, showing me the culture, work hard, play hard. And so, yeah, it was a pretty good experience working with Julie and, our RMC and our moving company, which was LOVE+RELO. So.
Yeah. Julie's great. And, it's funny when you say that you didn't have a lot of experience getting into the role. I hear that quite a bit. And a lot of people talk about how they fell into the role, and we're kind of trial by fire and everything and all that. So your experience is not unlike a lot of people's. Speaking of a lot of people, hey, everybody, if you're watching right now, first of all, thank you so much. Second of all, get active in the comments. I really want to know how you engage with this book. We're going to talk a lot about it. I'm sure some of you haven't read it. If you haven't read it, please go get it. The link there is in the private chat. Can we put it in the public chat if it's not already there? Awesome. Very good. Hit that like button right now. Throw a little shout out. Let me know who you are, where you are, what in the world you're up to right now, and any thoughts you have about your own personal misadventures. We're going to get into all that kind of stuff right here. Let's see who we've got tuning in. Julie Coleman. Hey, Ben, Koleshcia, and Ariana. Look at that. H-Town in the house. Looking sharp, ladies. Thank you, Julie, so much for recommending Koleshcia and Ariana. Tim Quirk, I'm looking forward to today's show. I can't wait to hear about your book. Ariana and Koleshcia. Awesome. Tim, you got to get it. It's good. It's a good one. Ray Abbott, good afternoon, everyone from sunny Vancouver. Got Canada in the house. That's what's up. Jana, hey, ladies. So exciting to start this week with such amazing guests. Rio is in the house. Brazil's here. Fantastic. Look at this. Did you know you were going to be on the international podcast today?
Did not know.
Yeah. Your book's about to be on fire in Brazil right now. I just want you to know that it's going to be climbing the Amazon. This is a dumb question, Jana, but do y'all use Amazon in Brazil? Is that an ironic question? Is that stupid, or do you order from somewhere else? Put a link in there if you order from somewhere else so we can get the Brazilians the book. Janet Turner, hey, from PA. Is this your last week in the Poconos, Janet? What are you cooking? I want to know. Stephen Meyer, I'll read it this weekend. We got a household goods driver here. Stay safe, driver. Read it this week. And my dad's in the house. Tulsa's here.
Oh, nice.
Okay, Dad.
Isn't it nice?
That's awesome.
Parents show up for me here. Katie Linehan, great way to start the week. Happy Monday. Thank you, Katie. Look at this, Julie's global superstar. Great guest. Try to keep it up, Ben. Thank you. No pressure. I appreciate that. That's great. That's Eric Tate from Ayers. What's up, Eric? It's good to see you. I got to ask, as a person who always aspired to be an author and write a book, what made you decide that this book had to be written? What was that moment, really? Ariana, I'm going to start with you, and then Koleshcia, I want to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, no, that's such a fantastic question. And I think there's so many folks who have approached us and said, I have so many ideas and thoughts about writing a book. And I never got around to it. And, congratulations to the both of you for being able to. And I think there's two things, if you want something done, ask a busy person, you'll probably learn a lot more about Koleshcia and I in the span of this conversation. But there are many hats that we wear, and we're always excited to kind of dive in when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And I think specifically for this topic and navigating corporate, it was something that was obviously very close to our hearts. Korissa is a bit of all of us, of the two of us and many more people. But I also just think giving a roadmap, giving a voice to almost validate the feelings of other folks who look like us, who other women and women of color who kind of have experienced these things. We've heard that it resonates quite a bit, even beyond, sort of color. And so just validating experiences that we've had, that we've heard from other folks, and just do it. I think flexing creative muscles too. It was a lot of fun to kind of pass the pen back and forth. Koleshcia, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, from an HR perspective and even just from a business perspective, I think that there's quite a bit of power in storytelling, right? Like with books and stories, that allows people just the opportunity to learn and grow and understand the experiences of others. And I think for us, as Ariana and I were having a conversation when I was actually out on maternity leave, I think what we found was, as Black females working in the corporate space, I think we struggled just to find a book that actually told our story, told our experiences. I think that there's lots on the market around DE&I and the strategy and how do you build a good one, right? But not really one that really spoke to our story. And so I think for us, often we tell those stories within our trusted communities, our trusted circles, but not necessarily sharing it with others, probably because it felt a bit more safe. And so that doesn't necessarily get us to a place of change. That certainly doesn't open up the opportunity to have conversations. And I think for us, in order to drive the change that we were looking for, you got to have the courage to have difficult conversations. And that means having real conversations about the real experiences that people face. And so we feel like putting out a book like this would provide a catalyst to be able to have those conversations in a bit of a safe way, right? Because it is fictionalized, but it's certainly based off of the collective experiences of people of color in the workplace. So that's what we were aiming for.
Koleshcia, you bring up such a good point about storytelling and the power of stories. What was the decision like to make it a fictional or fable, versus making it kind of a nonfiction handbook, kind of what was the thought process there?
Yeah, I think for us, it was a matter of, I have my stories, right? I have my experiences. I know my own lived experience, and surely Ariana has hers as well. And then we hear the stories of others, and there's a lot of commonality. There's a lot of similarities, right? And so for us, it was less about telling our own story, but trying to tell more of a collective experience and surfacing some of the challenges and even some of the triumphs that we face as a group, right? So less person, individual, more collective experience that I think would resonate with a lot of folks.
Yeah, and when I read it, what I like about that approach is when I read it, you identify with Korissa and you just say like, okay, I like this person. She's obviously a really hardworking professional who's just trying to get ahead, like kind of everybody who's on the corporate ladder. And then when things happen to her, you feel that pain in a different way than when it's somebody else's pain, because you've identified with her now and she's your character now because you're like kind of imagining her, And so now when it happens to her, those we talk about microaggressions in the book, and I'd like to kind of unpack some of these ideas as well. But then there's also kind of the flip side of the micro traumas, right? And so you feel those kind of micro traumas in your heart, and I think in a way it's less abstract, even though it's fictionalized, it's less abstract than reading a handbook about DE&I.
Absolutely.
I think you hit it on the head, Ben. Really wanted folks to feel it and to resonate with it. And certainly that narrative style, I read a few things like that in grad school, right? And you just remember those stories so much more than, just the kind of checklists.
Yeah, stories, side note for anybody out there, anybody, I mean, this is a rhetorical side note. Stories really help drive a point home. So if you can figure a way to storylize your, I don't know, that's not a word, but whatever, to make it into a story, it'll really resonate. For anybody that hasn't read the story out there, can you give them kind of a quick synopsis of what goes down in Corissa's Misadventures?
What doesn't go down?
What doesn't go down in Misadventures?
I tend to be a little verbose. This is something that is known. But, what's interesting about her story is, again, if you think back to early career, the types of things that you have to navigate as a young professional straight out of college, not necessarily knowing, you probably moved to another city, a bigger city. You're trying to figure out your friend group. You're trying to figure out your professional persona. You're trying to, move and shake with the best of them. And oftentimes you may or may not be confronted with a sense of, what does this all mean? And am I really in the right place at the right time? And all these sorts of existential kinds of conversations that you have with yourself and maybe project them out a bit. And you see Corissa go through all of that, so it's really like a slice of someone who's in early career, just trying to navigate the daily things that happen. And certainly she's confronted with a fair few dilemmas. Safe to say.
It seems like kind of they were all addressed from professional to personal, and we want to get into some of those things specifically. I want to recognize a couple of people who are showing up here in the comments. Keep these comments coming. Hit that like button if you haven't done so already, and if you have done so, hit it again. It's always appreciated. And also, love to hear your questions. I want to hear your questions for Koleshcia and Ariana about the book. Jonathan saying it arrived yesterday. Awesome. Jorge, hi, everyone. Great day from Miami. Happy week ahead. Awesome. Love the positive vibes. Robert Brizuela from Nashville, Tennessee. Robert, you always have some good questions and comments. I'd love to hear them. Sandra. Yes, Sandra, get the book. You'll love it. Love to hear your questions as well. Mina, aloha from Oahu.
Oh,
fantastic.
Very nice.
Gosh, I've heard like 5 places I'd rather be than Dallas, Texas right now. This is great. What's up, Preet?
One of them, Ben.
Where was one of them?
Houston's always
See, why do Houston people always have to start something? You come on the show and you always got to start something, and then we spend 5 minutes debating whether Houston or Dallas. I will tell you something, though. I will tell you something about this, because I always get into a debate with all my Houstonian friends here. I think I might have been switched. I think that Houston, I don't know, that the food is just, the food's great in Dallas. Dallas is so underrated. Okay. But I think Houston might.
Definitely.
Might. I don't know. We'll see. David Sharon checking in from Kalamazoo. What's up, Kalamazoo? David, I'd love to hear your questions as well. Preet, I'm actually going to write a cross-cultural book on expat experiences. I have my PhD in psychology. All right. Awesome, Preet.
That is awesome. I'm working on my doctorate too. That sounds like a wonderful, yeah.
I got to know. Ariana, what's your doctorate going to be in?
Leadership. It's a leadership doctorate. I'm looking at innovation in virtual teams. Who knew? I started before the pandemic.
Wow, you called that one, didn't you? Wow. You got a head start. You got like a year head start on everybody else. That's awesome. That's fantastic. So I'm going to ask a question since you just brought it up, and we're kind of going off topic here. But Ariana, I gotta ask: leadership in virtual teams. Everybody's asking, if you're virtual, how do you create culture?
Such a great question, and I am probably about 2.5 years away from answering it. This is the answer that you'll get from most doctorates, because doctoral students, because you have to dig in and drill into such a niche topic with a lot of effectiveness and intentionality. And so I'm really looking at leadership style and how it can transform a team to actually be more innovative. And God bless everybody, but there's about 165,000 different leadership paradigms that you could choose from on any given day. I'm sort of being hyperbolic slightly.
You just blew my mind there. Yeah, for a second.
But no, it's situational leadership. I think oftentimes is really what you're going to hear. But there's really some interesting, I don't want to go too academic, but there's really some interesting offerings, I think, in the literature that talk about inclusive leadership, ethical leadership, and of course, transformational leadership, which is geared towards change. And in the VUCA environment that we're in, I don't think anybody's going to be able to kind of sit back and just sort of allow things to happen. It's a very volatile environment that we're in. So
okay, I'm going to stay here just for one moment, because it ties into the theme of the book. I mean, DE&I, right? DE&I. I mean, so how do you how do we all care for DE&I in a virtual environment? What are some of the unique challenges, and what are some of the maybe strategies we can do to be more inclusive?
I mean, first, what I'll just say is it's so hard to build trust in general. I think it's easy for us to recognize, at least now, almost 2 years into the virtual working world that we've been in, the pandemic, that trust is even harder to cultivate in a geographically dispersed team and a multinational team, right? So if you've got different cultures, different personalities, all those things you have to kind of keep in mind. But really, where I would like to I guess, emphasize for folks who are listening, and even hopefully in my doctoral work, is actually personalizing our styles for the individuals that we are looking after. If you think of leadership as kind of a servant orientation or a role that you play that actually can bring the best out of people, there's nothing that can beat that. I mean, I was sitting on a global virtual team before the pandemic, and I had the pleasure of working with a very, very high impact, excellent team of, pretty much experts sitting in all these different countries. And our boss gave us a ton of latitude, but he also met us where we were. And I think at the end of the day, that's what builds affiliation. That's what builds belonging, is people seeing that they're valued and their perspective is uniquely valued, and they're able to actually bring that into the work. That feels, I think that's where a lot of folks and teams and organizations can unlock a lot of value. Not to overuse that word, capital V.
I know. I love the phrase "meet us where we are." Right. I think that's really the essence of inclusion. And I think when you look at this virtual environment, I think that there's a lot more maybe disparity potentially possible in a virtual environment. I think that everything gets exacerbated a little bit. Like if there was cliquishness before. Right. Well, I think it's going to get worse, right? Because now you take out all the happenstance that's in the office. I mean, if there's differences in, even living situations or home life or family structures or whatever, I think it just gets exacerbated. Income inequalities. I mean, whatever, it gets exacerbated. I could stay here all day and talk about my own theories on these things and everything, but I want to hear from the folks out there in the audience, because I've got my own questions here, but I always want to prioritize your questions out there. We're just going to hit Preet up again. DE&I, we need to communicate even more and ensure people are being invited to the table when exploring solutions.
She's absolutely right. And you're absolutely right too, Ben. I was just going to say there already have been some studies. I mean, they're sort of nascent, but indeed that these kinds of inequalities are exacerbated in a virtual environment. And that's why it's so much more important, to Preet's point, to actually invite people in.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Kathy says, I love to read what you come up with. I'm reading a book about leadership where one statistic mentioned that for job satisfaction, employees would rather be anywhere else other than with their boss.
Woo. How's that for some hard-hitting data?
Yeah, right. People don't quit jobs, they quit their boss. And by the way, they'd rather be anywhere else than with their boss. This is
now
hilarious.
Your boss is inescapable, right? They can get you on email and Teams and WhatsApp. And
I am so guilty of this. I'm going to tell myself for just a moment. When I was couple, jobs ago, I would like to do these happy hours. And I would do these happy hours after work. And I'm like, oh, sweet, we're going to build team. We're going to have a beer. It's going to be great, And I didn't realize until, honestly, years later, and I really just had more information, that it wasn't inclusive. It wasn't inclusive because people that could attend after work happy hours were certain types of people with certain types of family structures, certain types of responsibilities, certain types. And then not to mention the fact that some people just didn't even want to be around me for other reasons, right? Besides whether or not they even could attend, they just didn't want to be there, right? And so anyway, and then of course what was the resulting happy hour? Typically 95% male, very white, very younger, just that whole vibe, right? Kind of bro-y, right? The whole deal, right? And so anyway, I just learning.
So I guess, Ben, hearing you talk about it, I think that's very real. Like, there are certain demographics of folks who can actually make it to the happy hour or engage in the meeting before the meeting. I mean, you sound like you've reflected on it and had some thought about it. I guess, knowing what you know now versus maybe how you would have been in the past? Is there anything that you've changed in terms of how you engage with folks outside of work?
Thank you, Koleshcia, for the question. Yeah, I've realized that I can't trust myself to make these decisions. No, but I mean, kind of seriously. So I, my first hire in my company was Jana. Janaina is our project manager, but she's also our diversity and inclusion manager. And so she's always there in every single thing that we do. We're a 2-person shop, soon to be 3-person in 2 days. Shout out to Danny Herskowitz. But she is involved in every decision. And so as soon as I make a decision that's not inclusive, she's like, hey, did we think of this? Did we think to put Braille on the business cards? Did we think to have a meeting that incorporated people or do a different time zone or use different languages or, just stuff that I would have never even thought of because I'm coming from where I'm coming from, and I think we tend to overestimate our own intelligence and own comprehensiveness of our experiences and just think we know everything and whatever. And we're more our perspective is more valid than it truly is. And so anyway, so I've incorporated people that are just smarter than me in other areas and have different backgrounds and different viewpoints, really.
Well, I think you're being, it's a really nice anecdote. And honestly, I think you've tapped into something that certainly the book espouses, and we like to talk about as much as we can, which is, the D and the I are different. They're complementary, right? Bringing diverse people in is one part, but the inclusion of how you and Jana work like a well-oiled machine, like left foot, right foot, inviting her in and being able to actually bounce ideas off of her and allow her to bring her whole self to every conversation and all the business decisions you're making, I think is so critical. So you kind of said it in an offhand way, but I loved the main point there because it's so important to have both.
Yeah. No, so I was just going to agree with Ariana and just echo what she said. I think that, there's diversity and then there's inclusion, right? So diversity is just about different people coming into a room. But I think where you really get the value of bringing different people into the room is around the inclusion space, right? And you have diversity of thought. And then I think inclusion is really about how you leverage that diversity of thought. How do you really create a culture where people can use their voice, right? And feel comfortable enough to speak up. And that's the piece that I think now we should be shifting towards, not necessarily diversity in the representation and increasing that, but using those voices and the diversity of thought to actually drive change and innovation. That's what I think is critical.
Excellent point, Koleshcia. And that reminds me of a part in the book where, Corissa's in this meeting. Spoiler alert, y'all. I mean, still buy the book, please. But she's in this meeting and the company scored well in all these other KPIs, but they scored poorly on operational excellence and DE&I. Right. And so, of course, the leader's like, well, I'm really disappointed. How come we scored low in DE&I? And then it's like, Korissa, and then Carissa's like, well, I mean, gosh, maybe you should ask more people more often about how they feel about things and maybe you get better results, And of course, she's on the spot to be like the voice of all people not white and male. Right. Yeah. It's like no pressure there, so it's like. Anyway.
I think we laughed writing that part up. We're like, oh gosh, how often does this happen?
It was so real, though. It was so
real.
And I think it's real experiences of multiple people who sit in these corporate meetings, and it's like, so what do you think about this?
Right. Side eye.
It's very real.
So I envision the way this book was written as like there was a period of a couple months where y'all would just write down all the crazy stuff that happened at work, and they'd be like, "Yo, I got a new one," and y'all would text y'all, "Yo, I got one."
No, for legal reasons, we can't comment to that question. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, these are real experiences, lived experiences from us and others. Because once you're like that friendly HR person, people will come to you with a lot of other things that have happened to them.
Oh, that's true, right? And I remember the friendly neighborhood HR person was one of the unofficial titles.
Christian, yes.
Yeah, so super interesting.
Oh yeah.
I want to hear other questions from people out there that are checking this out. And I know not all of you have had an opportunity to read the book yet, but but I'd love to hear your thoughts out there. Jana saying, I love when you share about the learning curve. Proud. I learn every day with you. Same. Likewise, Jana, for sure. And let's see here. People are just loving the conversation. Preet, I agree with you, Ariana. And Koleshcia, perspectives are diverse too and weave through each of the letters D, E, and I. What do you think about diversity education in corporate environments? Great question.
Great question.
How do we do it? How do we do it right? How do we not do it wrong? Help us out.
I have a lot of thoughts and opinions, and I'm sure Koleshcia does too. I'm going to say two things that probably sound oppositional, but the first is I think there are some hard-hitting data already that says that, you know, anti-harassment, anti-discrimination, these kinds of compliance-oriented trainings are just kind of check the box for folks. In addition to the fact that kind of your standard issue, you know, unbiased training is probably not going to do much for people other than make them feel sort of like a bit of virtue signaling, right? Like, I've done that, I'm done with it, I can kind of check the box on it, and excellent, I'll probably do this again in a year or two to refresh. So I don't know if this is exactly where you're going with this, Preet, but where my mind goes is really trying to actually deepen the conversation and make it real for people. Again, which is coming back to why we wrote the book in the first place. So depending on what you mean by diversity education, I think there are a number of ways to approach this. And you've got your compliance sort of things that you want to do with a diversity heading, which I mentioned. Harassment, you know, these kinds of discrimination type trainings that you just want to do to make sure the organization is covered. And then there's other things that you can actually do to build and deepen a sense of inclusion and equity, which we haven't necessarily talked so much about. So I think I wouldn't want to give an organization that much credit for doing the compliance-oriented things and the things that just need to happen. But where I do see, especially I think after we saw the events of 2020 in particular in social justice movements, I do see, you know, organizations really deepening their understanding of the lived experiences of the Black and Brown employees that they have on board. And I think that is actually a lot more educative and meaningful than just kind of attending an e-learning for 60 minutes around, you know, anti-harassment.
Yeah, I echo what Ariana has said. I think for me, there's a piece around, I think for many years, people have seen DE&I as kind of to Ariana's point, a check the box exercise, an HR initiative, you know, more compliance driven. But I think now with the recent events, I think that there's just a renewed focus on DE&I. I think that people are looking more for less pretty words on a page, right? I think for many years, many companies have had DE&I a part of their strategy. It's a pillar, it's a people priority, you know, whatever buzzword you want to throw out there. But I think now with all the recent events, I think people are willing to hold companies a bit more accountable and want to see companies really just put their money where their mouth is and move more from compliance to more action, right? And if we don't see that, in the absence of that, then we say, you know what, that's not acceptable. You know, I think that companies need to feel a sense of responsibility in making sure that their environments are not only just increased representation, but also feeling inclusive. And so I think that there's a little bit of a different dialogue that's happening in the moment than that's been happening maybe 4 years ago, for sure. I think, in at least my experience, so I like to speak from the I think with DE&I, a lot of times we try to have conversations about things that are a bit more comfortable for us. So for example, gender, right? A lot of companies have a lot of initiatives. When we talk about DE&I, they have a lot of initiatives around gender and look at what we're doing. We're increasing here, we're doing that, but then less discussion, less conversation about maybe some of the things that are a bit more uncomfortable, like race. And, you know, naturally so, right? People tend to gravitate towards things that make them a bit more comfortable. But when it comes to race, it's uncomfortable to discuss, because you'd have to acknowledge that systemic racism exists, and it doesn't end when an employee, you know, shows up to work and hits the workplace. And so I think now people are just looking for companies and organizations to just do more in that space and really show up as they've done with other demographics.
Well, on the flip side, I mean, the other side of the coin with systemic racism is white privilege, and so it's not only acknowledging that there is systemic hurdles for Black people, brown people. But the flip side of that, which is to say that just as unfairly as they are, as that is detrimental, is as unfairly as it is beneficial for white males who also take, sorry for everybody out there, I'm just getting personal here, but, we also have to acknowledge that because, and so I think that gets even more uncomfortable, and so when we talk about, on the show, and we did this last year, and we probably need to revisit white fragility and everything and all that comes along with that. Because, when you say white privilege, it gets real, it gets real quiet, it gets really quiet. We go inside, and put our head under the covers, with that. But I've heard, you know what? I'm really proud of where we're going with this conversation, because I've heard a couple of times different white male CEOs address white privilege in a public forum within their companies. And I think that that's kind of the sacred cow that if you can start talking about that openly and honestly, I think that that's real change to me, in my opinion, because to name that, I think is really hard for because you also talk about white solidarity. It's really hard. So I'm hopeful. And I'm just really appreciative, honestly, Ariana and Koleshcia, for you and people who are willing to have these conversations, and also white people who are willing to have these conversations, because Black people did not create racism. White people did. So if we're going to fix it, it's going to be a team effort.
Well, you just gave me goosebumps, Ben. I think you're tapping into something that we really hope was an undercurrent in the book, which is around allyship, what it really actually means to be co-conspirators in the journey towards social justice. And so, Koleshcia brought up so many good points around other less, uncomfortable topics. But indeed, I have a few folks, and I think we all can look at a few others who, are sort of doing the good work and creating a bit of that virtuous cycle, and really stepping into the discomfort on a daily basis, because from what I understand, you have to do it every day to kind of stay with it and actually facilitate that change. Right. And so I really appreciate folks who actually want to get in there and do the work with us, because so often it has been looked at as there's racist ideology or sort of racially coded things. Black or brown person, why don't you help us to fix it? And it's like, well, I didn't have anything to do with it in the first place. Actually, I'm the victim. We ask victims to solve the problem in any other, sort of domain.
Right. Well, because there's this narrative, and as a note I wrote about talking about the idea of the race card and everything, right? And how problematic it is, the saying, why are you always playing the race card? I noticed, so much, what I love so much about this book is the internal monologue that she's having. The do I or don't I conversation at every turn of her life is the do I or don't I? Do I take a stand here or don't I? Do I correct this person to my own possible detriment or don't I? Do I stay true to my values or do I stay true to my career? And these two things, why can't they just mesh? Why do they have to be separate? Why did and I just I felt that struggle, and it was just well done, really well done. The way you wrote it was well done. All right, okay, we got some questions. I want to get to all the questions and the comments here. This is great. Thank you for just. Okay, we got an easy one here from Janet. How did Ariana and Koleshcia meet and some come to collaborate on the book writing? What was that conversation like?
So Ariana and I actually know each other from our Shell days. So I don't know if you heard. So prior to coming to Microsoft, I worked at Shell for about 9 years, and Ariana and I felt like we were following each other in our career paths. And so she and I met and actually worked on a team together supporting one of the corporate functions. And so she and I just stayed in contact quite a bit. And so when I went on maternity leave with my son, who is now 3, we were just doing a catch up, checking in, seeing what was going on. I needed some human interaction aside from, a small human, a little human. And so in our conversations, it was just talking about what's going on with you, what's going on with me, what's the state of, just diversity in corporate in America at that time. And mind you, that was 3 years ago. And so during that conversation she and I were having, we started talking about our experiences and, oh, wouldn't it be great if there was just a resource that existed to help people better navigate these spaces? Because I think for Ariana and myself, it was very new, right? Coming from the background, or at least for me, coming from the background, I'm the first in my family to really come into a corporate setting, especially once in Fortune 50 companies, right? And I think coming in so new, you stumble a little bit, right? You have some growing pains, and you wish you have the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. I wish someone would have told me. Am I the only one experiencing this? And so for us, it was just about, how do you create a resource that, one, helps people know that they're not alone, right? And then two, how do you open up the conversations for people to then try to better navigate, whether it's partnering with an ally or just doing some more self-reflection. And so from there, we just started discussing, and it was, I want to be an author. Do you want to be an author? There's nothing on the market. Let's go for it. Like, it doesn't exist. Let's just do it. And yeah, I think we definitely, between the two of us, when we commit to something, we double down on it. And so here we are.
One thing led to another, led to another.
Led to another.
The rest is history.
All right. Follow-up question. What do you see? What is Corissa's next step? Is there another chapter to the saga? I mean, how do you see that?
Look,
this is such a great question.
Man, it's a loaded question, Ben, but I think for us, we always intended for the book.
Did y'all lose me? I'm sorry.
Can you hear us? I can hear you, Ben.
I think there's a little of a lag. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ariana. Okay.
You back, Ben?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think I cut out a little bit. My bad. I was just saying, what's the next chapter? What's the future for Corissa?
Yeah, I was saying that, for us, the intent was always for this to be a trilogy, just because I think people just experience different challenges, different things at different career stages. And so we wanted to at least create the space to explore those a bit further. I think for Corissa, we'll start to get into, as she progresses in her career, what are some different things that she faces? Maybe we get into mentoring, exploring. Maybe she revisits some of the things that happened in book one that sparked some trauma for her, and how does she navigate that? I know Ariana and I have been working quite a bit around actually providing a bit of a discussion guide, if you will, a supplemental guidebook to help facilitate some of the conversations. So we're in the process of finalizing that. But I think given where we ended the book, there's quite a bit of opportunity.
So many things.
Huge cliffhanger right at the end.
It's a big cliffhanger, and it's sort of intentional, and I love it because we always were like, this is probably going to follow our career histories a little bit in the sense of, now we're married, we both have 2 kids, navigating how do you balance those competing and sometimes competing priorities, right? And so again, always competing priorities. I hate to say my kids are competing with my job, but indeed, there's only so many hours in a day. So, how does she actually move through progressing in her career and getting into a relationship and the dynamics that come with high-powered couples, if you will, people with ambitions and navigating still work life. So absolutely, there's a lot in store for Corissa, and I hope everybody sticks with us. But in the meantime, hopefully the guidebook too that we hope to come out before the end of the year can give people some useful food for thought, because there's quite a lot of reflective questions and kinds of things you can do in small groups or even individually to whether you're an ally or you feel a sense of connection with Corissa from a demographic point of view. There's some things individually and collectively I think we can unpack further.
I got so many ideas right now. I know you already have these ideas, but I'm about to mansplain what y'all already know. This guide though, because now once you get the guide, it becomes teachable, and now you can productize it. And you can be like, hey, we're gonna come do some training through the lens of this extremely accessible book right here. And here's the guide with it. By the way, pay me a whole bunch of money. Let's come talk to your company to answer Preet's question about how do we do education properly. And then the second one obviously has to be motherhood as a professional, because this book is great because it studies it studies being a Black woman, right? And the intersectionality and the textures and the layers there of all that going on. And then when you add kids to the mix, then how do we balance, and I taught, gosh, we talked to Shayla King on here a few weeks ago, and she, her passion in life is mentoring and coaching, professional moms who are also professionals, and the mom guilt and all the other stuff that comes along with it, because then it just gets even heavier. Yes. To your point. Yep. And then I love the idea of flipping it around and then mentoring down to some younger woman coming up in so much. It's rich. It's rich, right? It's rich. It's really rich. And this is great. People are asking this question. Jody Harris, shout out to Jody. Hope you're well. I joined late. Where can we get your book? What's the best place to buy it?
You can get the book on Amazon. I think Tim might have dropped the link in the chat, perhaps, but you can get the book on Amazon. You can get the book on Google Books as well. We can certainly. Thanks, Tim. Yep, you've dropped it in there. So yeah, you can get the book on Amazon and also Google Play.
What's the best place to buy it where the author gets the highest percentage of the proceeds? Because let's be honest, right? There's a lot of ways to get media these days, and not all of them are equitable.
Ooh, yes.
You want me to take that one, Ariana? Or?
I was just going to answer it very matter of factly, which is, if you buy the ebook, then certainly the margins are different, right? Because there's not that production, the production value that has to go into actually producing the product of the book. But you might be old school like me, and you want a hard copy to actually make some notes and write in the margins. And so we didn't write the book to make a bunch of money. We wrote the book to create a lot of conversation. So however you want to get it, please get it.
Yes.
Love it. This is great. We got people checking in here. Okay. Here we go. Oh gosh, let's get back into it. Here we go. So, first, Kara, I'm going to shout you out, Kara. The conversation is to constantly continue. Otherwise, nothing really changes. For sure. Preet comes up with one of my pet peeves. When I hear I don't see color, I get very frustrated because I am brown. How can you not see that? LOL. So I want to educate in the uncomfortable space. My background, master's degree in intercultural relations, taught me to be bold.
Love that.
Yeah.
I don't see color as a big cop out to the conversation.
And there was a time that was actually not a politically incorrect thing to say, because the intent, and I'm going to give a little bit of grace here, the intent was actually, you don't show up to me as a person of color who's different than me. I see you for who you are, and you bring, a value to this conversation that we're having, where I don't want to just dilute you down to your race or ethnicity. And indeed, I think that time is now gone, because nobody ever really liked hearing that. If you're a person of color, it always would be like nails on the chalkboard for me in particular. But I can remember in college, it was like, oh yeah, unity, and we don't see color, and everybody's the same. Everybody's not the same. And if you're colorblind, then that's one thing. But even still, you can see tones in skin color. So absolutely, I'm right there with you. This is not the thing to be saying anymore. And just talk to me how you would talk to anyone else, right? Don't diminish who I am very clearly to make a different point.
Okay. Yes, you're right. You're so right. And I think back in the day when it used to be, I hate X people, this was a step up. I don't see color. It was a huge step up from I hate so-and-so. But then when we got past the I hate so-and-so overtly, and we're now dealing with the subtext and the coded language and the institutional racism, the subtle nuances, we have to get a little more nuanced than I don't see color. Yep. All right. Good one, Preet. I always say, how did you get here? Did you stop at the red lights or not? How did you even get to work today? Like, what did you do when you saw a red light? Did you not stop, or because you don't see color? How'd that work out for you? I don't really understand. Oh my goodness. This is great. We got a question from Mina here. How do you bring up DEI to an outside affiliation? I am seeing a lot more disparity and non-inclusion within my outside professional affiliations versus the company for which I work. Non-inclusion within my outside professional affiliation. So it sounds like it's worse outside of work than in the workplace, Mina. Is that right? Or am I reading this wrong?
Within professional affiliation. So is it, let's say, the
different certification
groups,
network groups?
Is that?
That's how I'm reading it too. Yeah, this is a good question, because I think as we start to hopefully see progress in our immediate work environment, you would hope to see the same progress in the institutions and the other groups that we remain affiliated with. And I personally, having young kids and navigating elementary school and these kinds of things, I have my own kinds of thoughts about how they might do DE&I better in public education. But that's neither here nor there. That wasn't the question. I think, Mina, to your point, if you're seeing something, it's always worthwhile to say something. It sounds maybe pretty simple, but I think it's also kind of scary sometimes to say, oh, well, have we thought about this or have we thought about that? Because you actually can make a difference if you're seeing something that maybe others aren't seeing.
Koleshcia, do you have any thoughts on this? I have some thoughts. I was curious.
It's really hard. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I think that, sometimes it can be a bit challenging to bring up DE&I, right? Because sometimes you don't want to be that one person that's always bringing it up in every single forum, whether it's at work or it's in your personal life or it's, in your professional network. But I think to Ariana's point, right, if you see something, I think it's important to call it out. And frankly, I think that sometimes you just have to meet people where they are, right? And so even if I think about companies, there are some companies that are a bit more progressive with this than others, right? And there are some companies that have a lot of initiatives, a lot of actions, and some that are trying to tread lightly. They're at awareness, not necessarily action. And so I think regardless of whether it's in your company or outside of your company, or if it's a professional network, I think that you just have to meet folks where they are, continue to raise the issue, right? There's no progress with silence, right? And so continue to raise it. Even though it can be uncomfortable, I get that, right? Because you don't want to be the squeaky wheel. But I think that it's important to continue to raise it. And then at some point, you'll see the progress that you're looking for.
Yes. So especially being a professional mom on a small island, Mina says, it's really hard. She says, I have so many thoughts about this, Mina, because we talk about this in terms of the associations that we're members of. And when you go to the conferences, the room is very not diverse. And when you think about, similar, it's kind of like global mobility, right? Because at the end of the day, the organization is making a decision about whom to choose to send to these things, right? Who to sponsor, right? Who are they going to spend the $2,000 to register for the conference, right? Who are they going to send? And they favor senior executives and they favor salespeople and customer-facing people, for the most part, is what I found. And the room is very white. And I think that now in our industry, because we skew kind of HR, it tends to inform a better probably balance gender-wise. I'm just kind of assuming without looking at the numbers, but it's a very white room. And so, Mina, I feel you on this, and I think this speaks to the E part, the equity part, right? About the access to the opportunities. I think my 3-year-old's knocking on the door. Speaking of 3-year-olds, he's about to learn something. You coming in? He's about to learn something. Uh-oh. I'm on a Zoom. Oh, that's my 6-year-old. Sorry. Hey, Danny, how you doing, buddy? Love you, man. So I think this is a real issue. And Mina, here's the good part. You're the customer in this situation. So unlike when you go to your boss and say, hey, how come we don't have more DE&I and this is all the stuff, the squeaky wheel thing, you're the customer, you're paying a fee, you're paying a, membership. Right. And so it's their job to represent you, and so you get you have no, I'd say no, but less fear of reprisal and less fear of marking you down as a bad actor or whatever. And discriminating against you in the future. So I think in that way it's easier. But I would also say, in the last point on this, I'll get off my soapbox, is white people. This is our opportunity to step up, because the squeaky wheel shouldn't always have to be a person of color or a woman. It's so much easier for us to say something than it is to put it on them to say something. So I think we could really be allies here and be the one to bring it up first.
It's very well said.
What do you think, Danny? You like that? Yeah, he likes that. All right, cool.
Oh, sweet.
Question to follow up on what you just said. I'm just curious. So I think my exposure, at least to the relo industry, it is a bit of a more homogenous group, right? Do you think that, like, look back 5 years to where the relo industry is now, do you see more progression, more people of color showing up, or do you find it to still be a bit stagnant? I'm just
Are we
curious.
getting better? Are we getting better like we hope we are?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I we had the same conversation when it was Pride Week, and of course I always operate under the assumption that it's getting better. And we had a transgender professional from BlackRock, and she's like, no, it's getting worse. Instances of violence against transgender people is on the rise. We're seeing all sorts of suicide rates, et cetera, all these bad indicators, right? And I want to believe it's getting better because we're having more conversations like this. But when I look around the room, I don't know that it is. I mean, there was a couple of key leaders that I looked up to that I was like, all right, cool. There's some representation there. And they moved on. Because they were just on a career path and mobility, and they just kind of moved out because there was just more upward mobility, I think. And we lost them. I know another one that I don't want to name names, but they're on their way up and out too, out in a good way. But unfortunately, the room changed, right? And so I don't know. I think we need to do a better job of being proactive. I mean, it's just like hiring, right? It's like, how do you hire? Where do you go? Where do you recruit? Where do you show up? And what signals do you give people that you are really about this and not like just signifying, not just, I think it was a token, gesture.
Virtue signaling. Yeah.
Virtue signaling. Thank you so much. And I think we need to do a better job of that within like the associations. And maybe it means offering like some sort of, I don't want to say scholarship, but like something to drive representation, where some sort of a mentoring program for women, people of color, whatever, at the association, like at the conference level, where like, if you send them, they get access to these additional opportunities, just like we would do for young professionals, right? We have a YP40 event, right? For young professionals. Well, why couldn't we do something for people of color, for instance? I don't know. Some of the thoughts I've had. What do you think about that?
I think we should ask those who have tuned in what they think.
Yes, good point. I forgot I was actually hosting a show here. I thought we were just having a conversation. Mina saying, "Hey, Danny, go ahead." Mina saying not diverse at all. Oof. She says, "Perfect. I hope to see you at ERC in the future." Yeah, cool.
Hope to see you in, or me and Ariana.
She didn't say.
All of us just show up.
Right.
Yeah. Do y'all go to conferences as part of your job? And what are your thoughts when you get to the association level at the national level versus maybe say the regional level, or even the regional level? I wonder.
I think in my previous role, it made more sense. Like I did attend the ERC conference, last year.
Boston, was it 2 years ago? Boston?
It was virtual.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah.
It was COVID.
I was like last year.
But yeah. So I haven't attended. I think because it was the way my role was structured, it made sense. I think now that I'm operating in a different capacity, not to say that there isn't that opportunity to come to ERC, but maybe there's probably some that there's a bit more of a natural connection. But I'm completely open. Ariana's probably looking like, what is ERC and what does that even mean? Like, what are you talking about?
My deductive skills are quite good, so I figured out that it was
we know.
some kind of mobility focused industry conference. But yeah, I mean, I think your question was such a good one, Koleshcia, in terms of like, is it getting better? And Ben, I just appreciated your reflections as well. I mean, outside of a conference, for mobility professionals, I'm just sort of harkening on any of the other kinds of conversations that I've been having in the last 2 years in groups outside of Shell. Yeah. And I would have to say that we're probably not going to see the fruits of our labor immediately. literally see. I mean, hopefully it'll feel different. The fruits of our labor will feel, people will feel included. They'll feel a sense of affiliation. They'll feel belonging, a sense of belonging, and hopefully psychologically safe. But in terms of ostensible difference in who we are and the composition of these kinds of things, I think it will take some time, to your point, Ben, in terms of those people who are actually making those decisions and how equitable, and access is given. That kind of thing is not just a light switch, because obviously we didn't get here overnight either. So we will have to give ourselves some time to, I think, see those changes. And it's going to feel painstaking, I dare say, as we go along on that journey to the ostensible changes.
Yeah, a lot of work to be done. And it's going to have to be something that's done consistently, to your point earlier. We got time for maybe one more question here. Let's see what we've got. Jody says it's not diverse, and this is sad. I think we are not hearing enough voices and points of view. Jody, excellent point. And I think we have to really call it out too, and actually, talk about it, and talk about it in real terms and not just kind of in these platitudes. Elena, the global mobility has a long way to go, especially with its hiring practices. Elena, I'd love to hear more thoughts on that. Elena's amazing. You know what? We've got time. We could talk about this for a long time. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. And by the way, get the book if you haven't already. If you're curious at this point, what are they talking about? Get the book, The Corporate Misadventures of Corissa Collins. There it is. There's Corissa. There's the title. And I've got to ask you the dumb question that you get all the time. Who would you say this book is more about? And I know it's not a fair question. It's a stupid question, but it's a question I'm sure you get all the time.
Who is Corissa more like?
Who is Corissa more like? If you had to pick.
She is equal parts. All of us. And this is a cop-out answer.
Are we gonna start printing "I am Corissa" T-shirts? Is that what
we might need to?
We might. We're thinking about some merch.
Yeah, we are thinking about some merch actually.
And don't be a Eunice.
don't be a Eunice.
Don't be a Eunice.
I am Corissa. Yeah, but I do think it's actually not a very common question that we get. And again, we literally held the pen and passed the baton between the two of us, and so there's stories and people that I recognize, Koleshcia recognizes, and but everybody's safe. So we got a lot of questions, I think, too, within the Shell context specifically. Like, am I going to see myself in this book? No, you're not going to see yourself in this book.
Am I Eunice? I know I'm Eunice. Stop playing.
Everybody. It was like we really weren't thinking about anybody in particular for most of it. It was just kind of an amalgamation of multiple people for every character.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Well, it's fun to hear the stories too, because as you're talking about the stories, I'm hearing some similarities there. Jenna, it's diverse when we talk about participants, not diverse when we talk about representation in the panels. Interesting. Yeah, super interesting. Julie, Koleshcia, and Ariana love the book. Let's keep the conversation going.
Yes.
Thanks, Julie.
Janet, I'll be ordering the book. Janet's a book reader. She likes to have the actual physical copy.
Awesome.
I know she will order the book too.
It's a quick read, Janet. Can't wait to hear what you think.
Love to hear what you think, Janet.
So you know what? Let's do something fun here. Let's do something a little light. Let's play a little game here at the end.
Okay.
When I always say let's play a game, people get scared.
I'm like thinking cap. Do I need to get my thinking cap?
Yes. It's like math bowl. No, this is actually we're gonna do a top 5. Let's see what the top 5 is. Tim, what's the top 5 for today?
Ooh.
All right. Yes. What's the top 5? So tell us about the top 5.
We can do that. Because I may or may not be a little bit of a Marvel geek.
You're at home here. Most of our viewers are.
Maybe.
So this is top 5 is our shared top 5 superpowers.
Oh yeah, this is good.
This is good. So now explain this topic to me. How is this gonna work? How to define this for me?
I think we can tag team. Koleshcia and I, we have a lot of similarities. We also have a lot of complementary skills. And so maybe you do one, I'll do one, Koleshcia, because I think in general we probably are feeling the same way about this top 5. There's so many good superpowers though.
Should we start from 5 and then work our way to 1?
Yes.
Yes,
please, because that would really screw us up if we didn't do that. So let's do that.
Start with 1 and end with 5.
We're very limited here.
So I think starting with 5.
Okay.
Super speed.
Super speed.
So I think both Ariana and I can really appreciate being able to move at the speed of lightning, getting things done very quickly, recognizing all the various hats we wear. And so like, wouldn't it just be great if I can get it all done and like sit on the couch and relax as opposed to, you know, working 28 hours.
So you want to run really fast so you can relax on the couch.
I think there's a famous social media star who he's done all sorts of household things like at top speed. Yeah, it's probably something like that. Just running around doing speedy laundry and these kinds of things.
All right. So if you had super speed, what's the one thing you would do? What's the first thing you would do, Koleshcia?
Laundry.
But you know that washing machine still takes like 40 minutes. I mean, you can run to it.
Maybe we can like inject some of the super speed into the washer and dryer so that it can move a bit faster. But the sooner I can get that done, like the better my life just is in general.
I think mine is meal prep. How long? I mean, chopping and like organize. I mean, like that one. Yeah, if that can be done speedy, that would actually be awesome. I think.
I like it. That makes a lot of sense. All right, number 4.
Okay, yeah. So telekinesis, right? I mean, this is again the same trajectory of the last one. You got the super speed, you can do everything fast, but what if you don't even have to leave the couch at all? You can just do it with your mind. Like, how awesome would that be? You know, you just get it all done. Yeah, you're just kind of like, okay, this move over there, this is going over there. I'm doing the laundry, closing the, yeah. So. Done.
This is way better than running to not run. This is way better. Telekinesis is way better. I love it.
There you go.
I love it. This is great. Koleshcia, if you had telekinesis, what would you do?
Probably the same thing that I already like, how can I just move things while just sitting on the couch and just not really moving? It sounds lazy, but let me tell you, like, it's super energizing at the same time.
Oh yeah. No, you see how hard they work when they're doing that stuff? They're always sweating. They're always like, number 3.
Genius.
This is pretty simple. I think being a genius just makes life and a bit easier and frankly a bit more fun. Just being all knowing about everything possible under the sun. Like if I could know everything, life is just a lot easier.
Yeah.
See, this one I say be careful what you wish for, right? I noticed a fair amount of scripture in this book, and this is like the tree of knowledge stuff right here. If you knew everything, you may not want to even, I don't know. This is scary. This is a slippery slope.
Not omniscient.
It's like if you knew better, you would do better, right? Like, right?
Yeah, but have you read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers? And they talk about how some geniuses go on to do, crazy, amazing stuff. And then some are just like bouncers at a nightclub because they just couldn't figure it out, So there's still a lot of like people that want to sit on the couch, even though they're geniuses.
You can jerry rig, the thing so that you can actually sit on the couch and not even need telekinesis, right? So if you're a genius, you jerry rig,
There you go.
There you go. All right, number 2.
Well, you got to throw in mind control. I mean, it's just sort of like it needs an honorable mention, and it's towards the top of our list for obvious reasons. We're moms, we're wives, we have a lot going on. We're HR professionals. If you could just like sort of just kind of like Jedi mind trick, your clients, your kids, your spouse.
Yes.
You could like circumvent even needing any of these other things because things would always work out how you want them to work out. And so in lieu of mind control, we have to use kind words and pretty things to say to people, which generally works okay. But yeah, just like if there was a catchphrase, you could just say it and then whatever you say next is the thing that people are going to do. Amazing. It would end world hunger, just like that.
I think it's so funny. You say mom, spouse, HR person, all of which mind control is at the top of the list. It's like, can these people just do what they're supposed to do right now? Okay. Exactly. I got you. Makes a lot of sense. Number 1.
Teleportation. Yes. So I think for Ariana and I, we both love to travel. We love to just, exploring different cultures, just really getting into it. And so think about like how amazing would it be if you could literally go on vacation in like a blink of an eye, in the snap of your fingers. Like it would be so amazing. Not to say we wouldn't take our kids with us, we just latch them on and get them there. But yeah, teleportation for sure. Top of the list.
Oh, I can see this. Like, I gotta go to the bathroom real quick. You just walk in the bathroom, boom, teleport somewhere else, like just for like 15 minutes.
All of a sudden, yeah.
This is the only thing that could weigh out over mind control, honestly, because our love of travel is undeniable. We're just like, want to get there quick. It's not about the journey. It is about the destination sometimes.
Definitely about the destination.
I love it. So question right now, if you could teleport anywhere right this moment, where would you go?
Let me scroll back up this list. I mean, Rio sounds good. Oahu, some of these places, some of the listeners we're calling in from, I was like, I could go there. I mean, literally, I'm getting claustrophobic in my country. I cannot remember the last time that it's been this long since I left and had a valid passport. So I will take anywhere at this point. I will go wherever. There's running
Koleshcia?
water.
Yeah, for me, so my favorite place on earth is Belize, Ambergris Ski. But I have a trip coming up in October to Turks and Caicos, so I'm just ready to get there to sit down and relax and just not really think about too much. Not use that mind control superpower that I'd like to have.
Don't even need it.
This is great. This is wonderful. I would choose to be nowhere else right now. This is my cop-out answer. This is the ultimate host cop-out answer. I would choose to be nowhere else right now than right here talking to y'all. This was amazing. This is a fantastic conversation. I love the book. Again, if you haven't gotten the book yet, you need to get it. The Corporate Misadventures of Corissa Collins. Go check it out. Get it anywhere fine books are sold. Also, Koleshcia Fitzgerald, Ariana Danquah. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate y'all being here and engaging on this and just kind of, edifying us and indulging these conversations and just kind of, it's just been really, really lovely. So thank you all for being here. Really.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Ben.
Thank you both. And everybody that tuned in, thank you so much. The show would not be a show if you weren't out there watching it. So thank you so much for getting involved. Get in the comments if you haven't done so already. Hit that like button, send a little virtual applause out, throw a little love out there, even though we know Houston's not as good as Dallas. Throw it out there to Houston. They need it down there. Just kidding.
Oh, man. You want to go for round 2 on this one?
And on the next show, Koleshcia argues with me about Houston supremacy. No, anyway. This is cool. Thank you so much, everybody out there. We will see you same time tomorrow. Take care, everybody.